They brought her in silence, as they did all of them, a shadow pulled from the fields, from a distant shore, across a threshold that hummed with ancient purpose. The world outside, sun, wind, the scent of her mother's hearth, stripped away with the rough garments. A chill, yes, profound, not from the marble floors, but from the very air of these gilded corridors. A silence, so thick it pressed against the ears, broken only by rustling silks, a distant fountain, or the muffled sob of a new arrival, quickly stifled. This was no pleasure garden, dear ladies. This was a foundry. Look closely, past the glittering tiles, beyond the whispered legends. See the fear in her eyes, untamed, raw. A fear tasting of dust and salt water. She was a creature of instinct then, a fawn thrust among wolves in velvet. Survival was the only language, a silent dialogue of observation. Which way did shadows fall? Who moved with authority? Who with treachery in her gaze? Every face a map, every gesture a code. And she, nameless, a mere commodity, learned to read them all, even as her own identity was slowly, methodically erased. Her worn dress, stained with the memory of a life now severed, lay crumpled. Beside it, like a challenge, the new gown. Sumptuous silk, cool against the skin, heavy with the promise and burden of this place. To shed the old skin, to don the new, was not choice. It was the first brutal lesson in transformation. The girl who once ran free, whose laughter echoed across open fields, was gone. In her place stood a vessel, waiting to be filled, or perhaps to be poisoned. The whispers began then, not from others but within, a quiet, insidious hum. Adapt, survive, ascend. The first glance across a courtyard, the first accidental brush of shoulders. It was not sisterhood that bloomed. No, something far older, more dangerous. The gaze of another woman, veiled in politeness yet sharp as a dagger. A rival. You felt it, didn't you? That sudden cold clench in your gut. The realization that every breath, every morsel, every moment of grace was a finite resource, and so many hands reached for it. This was the true nature of the cage. Not the walls, but the competition within. Here, ambition was not sin, it was the only path to breath. To merely exist was to be forgotten, used, discarded. To become someone, to carve a name into the stone of this dynasty, one had to play the game. And the game, my dears, was ruthless. It demanded a will of iron beneath the silk, a heart of stone behind the smile. The slow, suffocating rhythm of captivity began to quicken, pulsing with a new, dark energy. The girl was dead. A contender stirred, awakened by the chill of the marble, the heavy scent of jasmine, and the bitter taste of truth. The Sultan's chamber, after all, was built not on love but on calculated power, and the women within its shadows were its keenest instruments. The screams echoed, a primal symphony from the depths of the harem, not of pain, no, not truly. These were the cries that heralded a shift, a seismic tremor beneath the very foundations of the dynasty. A new breath had entered the world, and with it, a new threat. Or perhaps a new empress. One moment, she was a concubine, a vessel of fleeting pleasure, her existence as tenuous as a wisp of smoke. The next, with the wet, slick arrival of a male heir, a Shehzada, she was transformed. From a shadow she rose, a mother, a sultana, a pillar forged in the very blood of the Sultan's formidable line. Do you see the metamorphosis? the elevation from disposable beauty to indispensable power. It is a cruel alchemy, my friends, fueled by instinct and ambition. But with this elevation came a new kind of prison. The walls of the harem, once a gilded cage, now became a brutal battlefield. Her son, swaddled in finest silk, was not merely an infant, but a prize. And every other woman, every other mother who had also borne a prince, became an enemy. The air grew thick with unspoken challenges, with glances sharp as obsidian, with the hushed, almost imperceptible whispers that could, in time, become the whispers of betrayal. Her love, a mother's fierce, undeniable love, was instantly twisted, a desperate shield against the unseen blades of her rivals, a weapon to secure her child's ascension. Beneath layers of embroidered silk, tucked deep within a locked chest, lay a small bundle. A swaddling cloth stained crimson, a silent testament to the raw, violent entry of life into this world. And perhaps a grim foreshadowing of how it might leave. It was a secret, a memory, a constant reminder of the fragility of bloodline, a silent threat held close to her heart. What do you think she saw when she touched it? Not just birth, but the shadow of death, always dancing close. A tiny silver dagger, a traditional gift meant to ward off evil, rested always within her reach. Yet in her hand it felt less like an amulet and more like a tool. Her fingers, usually soft from perfumed oils, now clasped it with a grip born of desperation, of absolute resolve. It was not for her own protection, but for the life beating so faintly, so vulnerably within her chambers. A mother's love, they call it. I call it the first cut in the game of queens. Then came the naming ceremony, a hushed affair, a ritual older than these very stones, heavy with consequence. The imam's voice, a low drone, echoed through the chamber, not joyous but solemn, almost foreboding. The chosen name, whispered into the infant's ear, was a secret pact between mother and son, blood and destiny. There was no fanfare, no celebratory shouts, but a tense, suffocating silence, punctuated only by the rustle of silk and the soft breath of the new prince. Every eye, every shadow weighed the future. The dynasty had a new heir, and a new war had just begun. Standing behind the heavy velvet drapes, the air thick with the scent of rosewater, and a hint of something metallic, something old. I watch. To ascend to the title of Sultana, my dear, that is merely to win a skirmish. The true war, the war for the very soul of an empire, that commences only when the crown touches your brow. For what is power, truly, if it cannot reach beyond the gilded cage of the harem? This is where the artistry begins, the brutal ballet of unseen warfare. The palace, a labyrinth woven from stone and ambition, becomes a living, breathing creature. Its walls have ears, yes, but only for those who know how to whisper. Its shadows conceal secrets, but only for those who dare to seek them. A sultana, now, does not merely command, she cultivates. She plants seeds of loyalty in the hearts of eunuchs, weaves webs of informants among the scullery maids, and finds unexpected allies in the very guards meant to contain her. Every tea pourer, every bath attendant, every stable boy, a potential eye, an unwitting pawn. Her court is no longer confined to her chambers. It stretches into the kitchens, the barracks, even the hallowed halls of the divan. A dropped silk handkerchief, its intricate embroidery a map of coded intent, can redirect the course of a battle or condemn a grand vizier. A seemingly innocent gift, a jewel perhaps, bearing a hidden inscription, carries more weight than any royal decree. The game is played not with swords, but with whispers, not with declarations of war, but with the subtle erosion of trust between powerful men. Consider the Aga, who once served the Sultan with unwavering devotion. Now, a quiet word from her, a knowing glance, and his loyalty subtly shifts, a current diverted beneath the calm surface. The rivalries between the viziers, once their own petty squabbles, become instruments in her symphony of manipulation. She does not instigate, she merely amplifies. She does not betray, she merely reveals truths that serve her purpose. This is the era of forbidden knowledge, the silent re-sculpting of an empire from behind heavily guarded doors. The rhythm of influence is slow, methodical, like the drip of water wearing down stone, until, snap, a moment of decisive intrigue. A sealed letter, its wax broken not by the Sultan's signet, but by an unseen hand in the dead of night. A servant, his hand trembling ever so slightly as he pours the sherbet, knowing perhaps the chilling secret it might contain. Is she a villain, I ask you, or merely the supreme strategist, ensuring the survival of her bloodline, her dynasty, in a world designed to crush her? The silence after such an act is often the loudest sound in this palace. It is the sound of power, redefined. My gaze lingers on the empty doorway, where shadows seem to dance, before melting back into the ancient stone. The Sultan's cough, a rasping whisper, echoed through the vast, cold chambers of Topkapi, a hollow drum against the silence of a waning empire. His gaze, once sharp as a scimitar, now drifted across the ornate ceiling, lost somewhere between this world and the next, leaving the affairs of state to drift with him. The empire, a titan built on blood and ambition, felt the tremor of his fading life. But listen closely, my friends. Do you hear it? That faint rustle of heavy silk, a whisper of velvet from beyond the gilded screen, a sound almost imperceptible, yet it signifies the very turning of the world. For the throne, you see, is not always occupied by the man whose name is proclaimed from the minarets. Sometimes, in the opulent silence of the harem, behind layers of shadow and the impenetrable veil, another power stirs. A power that moves with a patience born of centuries, a will forged in the cruel crucible of courtly survival, where the softest touch can deliver the deadliest poison. This is the era of the veiled hand, where the matriarch, forbidden formal rule, grips the reins of an empire with an iron resolve, her touch unseen, her presence undeniable. Observe the Grand Vizier, a man whose spine had long bent to the will of another, his ambition tempered by a healthy fear. He stands, a puppet of high office, holding the imperial seal, its cold metal bearing the Sultan's cipher. His thumb brushes its surface, then, almost imperceptibly, his eyes flicker towards the heavy velvet curtain that conceals a private antechamber, the true seat of power. A nod, barely perceptible, a signal received in silence, a decision, unvoiced but absolute. The seal descends, pressing its mark onto parchment. A new tax on distant Anatolia, a vital trade route diverted, a formidable fortress ordered for construction. These are not the pronouncements of a sickly man. These are the calculated dictates of a woman, made from the heart of the harem, through proxies whose very existence depends on her grace. ambassadors, their faces etched with the dust of foreign lands and the weight of imperial demands, present their petitions. Their words are addressed to the throne, to the empty majesty, but their gazes, subtle yet insistent, seek the shadow behind the ornate lattice, the silent architect of their fates. The silence in the chamber is not empty. It hums with anticipation, with unspoken demands, with the heavy weight of a crown unseen, worn only in the deepest, most dangerous recesses of the mind. Even the Janissaries, those fierce lions of the empire, whose loyalty is to the Sultan alone, feel the distant tremor of her will. Orders for troop movements across vast plains, for the provisioning of distant garrisons, for campaigns that will redraw maps. They bear the Sultan's signature, yes, a necessary facade. But the intent, the strategic genius, the calculated gamble that weighs human lives against imperial expansion, that belonged solely to her. From the confines of her gilded cage, a prison and a fortress, she commands armies, shapes destinies, weaves the intricate tapestry of statecraft, each thread a life, each knot a betrayal. A decree, heavy with the fate of a province, with the power to enrich or to ruin, is laid before her. Her hand, slender yet unwavering, traces the calligraphic script. It does not tremble from weakness, but from the raw, unadulterated power it now commands. What drives such a woman? A thirst for dominion? Or the fierce primal instinct to protect her bloodline, her child Sultan, in a world where weakness is a death sentence, where a rival's smile can conceal the glint of a dagger? Such is the labyrinth of power, my friends. A game played not with swords, but with whispers in gilded cages, with smiles that conceal daggers, with silences that hold more weight than any declaration of war, and with the brutal, beautiful art of psychological manipulation. This is the brutal rise, the magnificent, terrifying reign of the great Sultana. And you, my friend, are but a witness to its dark splendor, standing here in the shadow of this pillar, as the dynasty bends to her unseen will. The morning light, pale and unforgiving, now filters through the high, arched windows of the Sultan's private audience chamber. It bathes the great gilded throne in a cold, indifferent glow, empty. Always, it seems, it returns to this state of profound, resonant silence. The whispers that once filled this space, of plotted coups, of whispered allegiances, of futures sealed with a single nod, have long since faded. Only the dust motes dance in the sunbeams, indifferent witnesses to centuries of ambition. They built an empire, these women. With hands that once clutched embroidered silks, they forged destinies sharper than any blade. They expanded borders, amassed treasures beyond imagining, commanded armies from their gilded cages. The very stones of this palace, the bustling markets beyond its walls, the distant provinces that bowed to its will, all bear the indelible mark of their ambition. But look closer. Beyond the grandeur, beneath the polished marble, lies the deeper truth. Every brick laid, every victory declared, was cemented with something far more precious than mortar or gold. What price, then, for such dominion, for the unwavering loyalty of a dynasty, for the power to shape the very course of an age? The cost, my dear ladies, was paid in isolation. In the chilling paranoia that gripped their hearts, even in the arms of those they trusted most. For how does one sleep soundly when the shadow of betrayal looms in every corner, when the silken threads of loyalty can so easily be rewoven into a hangman's noose. The crown, heavy with jewels, was heavier still with the weight of loneliness. The profound sacrifices made, not just of rivals, but of innocence itself, of the simple joy of a life unburdened by the relentless demands of power. Did they ever truly look into a mirror and recognize the woman who had started the climb? Or had the ascent, brutal and unforgiving, carved away too much, leaving only the hardened visage of a queen? And the bloodline, oh the bloodline! They fought so fiercely to preserve it, these great sultanas, believing it their sacred duty. Yet, what did they truly bequeath? Not just a throne, but a legacy of suspicion. A thirst for power that poisoned the very wells of familial love. The sons and daughters they raised, heirs to their formidable will, inherited not peace, but the unending echo of the game they had mastered. The shadow of their ruthlessness stretched through generations, a silent teacher. Betrayal became a language understood without words, passed down with the very milk they drank. A cycle, unbroken, where every ascent demands a fall, and every rise sows the seeds of its own destruction. The faded portrait of a sultana hangs in a less frequented hall. Her eyes, though painted centuries ago, still pierce through the dim light, holding secrets, holding judgment. She watches eternally as the dynasty she bled for continues its dance. Was it worth it, this grand, brutal symphony of power? To hold the world in your palm, only to find your own soul shrinking, shriveling under the relentless sun of absolute dominion. The quiet chamber, once echoing with the clamor of court, now stands as a testament not just to vanished power, but to the profound, silent cost of every empire built on blood. The dawn breaks, cold and clear, revealing only the enduring truth. The game never truly ends. It merely waits for the next ambitious heart to answer its call.